Okay, so it's time for another battle replay, I think. Another pitch battle replay. This was from before, and I'm playing, of course, as the dwarves. They've always been one of my favourite factions in Third Age, just because of how tough they are to break down, and now more than ever, that is more of a factor that you need to consider. My opponent is playing as Umbar, but we'll get on to that. So I've got a front line of standard Ironfoot warriors. They're the basic dwarf infantry, essentially, but they are still better than most other, well, better than pretty much any other mainline infantry because of how tough they are to break down, and they've got axes, so armor piercing. Very tough. I've got a couple of units of Ironfoot halberdiers to try and mitigate any cavalry that Umbar bring, and mainly that'll be the warlords. Also got a couple of units of axemen to give some damage to behind the Ironfoot warriors, so that there is some teeth here. I got a force of crossbows as well, a couple of Ironfoot crossbowmen, but mainly the Blacklock engineers. They're kind of like mini ballistae now because of the arrow weight, which is significant on these guys. Very, very strong at range. Will mow down a unit of heavily armoured targets in no time at all. That was a strange thing, the camera just did that. And then I've got a couple of units of Hammers of Gundabad to round out my infantry force. Much better now, these guys, because they were actually kind of fragile in the last patch, relatively speaking, next to other dwarf units. Now they are considerably tougher, and of course armor piercing with those hammers. And I even brought the goats. Now the goats are something of a topic, which I will get onto in a moment, and then we have the hammer guard where my general is. This is a somewhat unorthodox dwarf build, because usually they focus around their infantry. I've brought dwarven cavalry, so that's a thing. My opponent, on the other hand, as Umbar, is another infantry-focused faction, probably just like the dwarves, one of the most infantry-focused factions, to be honest, because they don't have much in terms of mounted options. Front line of Belagir halberds, again, they're pretty good as a frontline option, but they're not going to get too far against my warriors unless they get a very good engagement, well, a very favourable engagement in which they get to my lines without taking fire, which is unlikely. The Nardu Tariq are probably the Nardu Tariq, I think they're called. I don't know. I'll have to check that one. But the Abrazanim are going to be pretty good. They're very tough. They are also armor piercing. They don't do a lot of damage, but they will still trade relatively favourably as long as they don't get caught by one of my shock units. Let's see. He's got more Nardu Tariq. He's got more halberds as well. He's got a lot of infantry, more infantry than I've got because mine is of course more expensive, and I invested a bit in cav. Castamir's Chosen are very good. In terms of a sword and board unit, this might actually be the best unit on the field, because most of my good infantry is the hammers. Most of my money went into my cavalry and my crossbows, though, so that's an interesting thing. The Naaru Royal Guard, that's where his general is. Again, that's going to be a very tough unit to break down, but it's not going to win him the melee engagement on its own. Now, his range comes from the Castamir's Rangers. Does he have some crossbow corsairs around here as well? I believe he does. I believe they're sort of tucked away in the lines somewhere, but he has some crossbow corsairs somewhere. I think he also has some hidden units. The Abrazanim Narduzagar will do pretty good as well. They're shock infantry. They will trade very well against all my units. I think they might be the best shock infantry on the field as well. I think they are better than the Hammers of Gundabad. I'd need to check that, but still, Castamir's Rangers, he has an advantage in terms of range, but the range advantage overall is mine because the crossbows are so deadly. Then he has one unit of Warlords of Umbar. Anyway, let's start. Ooh, accidentally on ×6 speed there. Now for a start, we're slightly off-centre in terms of our line, so both of us are in a bit of an awkward spot. His Rangers have got a rather difficult dilemma on their hands, in that their damage is not going to be particularly effective against the vast majority of my infantry. The only infantry unit he's going to deal a decent amount of damage to would probably be my halberdiers, because even my Axemen of Erebor and Hammers of Gundabad have got heavy armour, so I mean, archers against the dwarves, honestly, unless they're armour piercing, you probably don't want to bother, because the dwarven infantry is so heavily armoured that you're not going to make much of a dent. Crossbows, however, much more like it, but then you open yourself up to a skirmish battle with the dwarven crossbows, and that is something which not many can win, especially with the Blacklock engineers. So it is a bit of a conundrum against the dwarves. I would say the dwarves' main weakness in a field battle is cavalry, which is something I tried to mitigate with my own, but Umbar can't really bring a lot of their own cavalry, but they do have quite a lot of their own very, very high tier infantry. The Castamir's Chosen are around here, and the Abrazanim Narduzagar, and the Royal Guard. Although I would have suggested that maybe a better pick probably would have been the Harbingers of Castamere instead of the Castamere's Chosen. Just because with Umbar I think their shock infantry is really excellent, and it's something which you can bring to bear against the dwarves to great effect. My crossbows are trying to get in position. The crossbows are not a bad target to go after with the archers either. They are still tough, but they're not quite as tough as the likes of my Ironfoot warriors, which are in shield wall, so they're going to last for a long time in a prolonged melee. This really is just a pre-battle where we're trying to sort of organise our armies to face one another, because we were off-centre. Bringing the Hammers of Gundabad out wide, trying to get them engaged with the enemy infantry, because they will be good against the Nadu Tariq. And pretty much all of his infantry, aside from probably the Abrazanim Narduzagar, which I think are slightly better at the same job, so don't really want to get involved with that. He's targeting my general unit with the Castamere's Rangers. Probably not a wise decision. The Ironfoot goat units have got really high defense, so it's not really worth it. Although I will get onto a reason why I don't like them very much. In fact, we may as well get on to that now. They are slow. Very, very slow. And that's why the Hammer Guard didn't feature in the top 10 cav list, because based on stats alone, they probably should have got there. They've got the highest attack by a very, very wide margin. They've got the highest defense. They've got 3 hit points. They've got all the things you would want. I think they've got the highest charge as well by 6 points. So they really have all the accoutrements to be the best cav unit in the game, but they are so slow that they can be out-microed and out-maneuvered too easily. And in my opinion, this is probably for the best, because otherwise if you gave the dwarves such a strong cav force without any downside, they'd be overpowered, to be honest with you, because their infantry is so strong. Cav is really their letdown, and here you can see the crossbows taking a lot of fire. I think there are crossbow corsairs and blackguards, I want to say, somewhere. But I think this was down to both the Castamere's Rangers and the Corsair crossbows, which I'm sure he brought, unless that was in another battle. Might just be the... oh, there they are, yes. So there are the crossbow corsairs. They're the ones doing the majority of the damage, I would have thought. Going to pull back my crossbows now that his main infantry line is coming forward. Belagir halberds, backed up by Castamere's Chosen and Nadu Tariq. That's a pretty good line. You've got everything you want there. You've got a lot of armour piercing, a lot of defence. He's sending his Castamere's Chosen in first though, which is a bit of a mistake. You want the halberds to go in first, ideally. Right, meanwhile, let's go and see the disastrous micro I'm going to do down here with the goats. Spoilers, I don't do very well with these guys. So essentially they're still being peppered by by the enemy's Castamere's Rangers. Not great, but now I'm going to say, well, you know what? He's only got 1 unit. I've got 3 units of goats. I'm going to charge in. I'm going to surround his warlords and take out his cav option. This, however, was a poor idea, as I will soon demonstrate. The Hammer Guard, I say, I'm going to pull over here into the middle. Try and get a nice charge off on some of his infantry. These guys I'm going to try and get around to the sides of the Warlords of Umbar, but the Warlords of Umbar are better than the standard war goats, but here they're so slow that I try and get them into battle as quickly as possible to prevent this unit from folding. But nearby he's got Castamere's Rangers firing at point blank. That's still not the end of the world because they're not armor piercing, but he's got Naaru Royal Guard. They're going to do more damage in prolonged melee, but really the Corsair Blackguards are going to do a horrendous amount of damage into the side here. Not counting the fact that the Warlords of Umbar were already winning this fight. So these goats are already doomed. I also got these guys caught on a unit of Abrazanim. I try to get away, but they're so slow they cannot outrun the units in time. I cannot get them away, so I try and charge into the side of his Naaru Royal Guard. They have taken considerable losses in this sustained melee. Actually, that's something I didn't notice before, and with that charge they will take even more, but my goats are pretty much not long for this world. The main infantry fight has engaged though. He hasn't got nearly enough of his units up here though, so this was a bit of a mistake by him. If he was going to engage the shield wall, he should have brought all of his units to bear. I kind of could have left these Axemen of Erebor in reserve, if I'm honest. The Abrazanim were not going to break through that shield wall. We've got some Ironfoot warriors going up against the Belagir halberds. They're in close quarters, so they're going to win. The Castamere's Chosen engaged some Ironfoot halberds. They would win that on their own. There goes my general. My goats are being slaughtered. But I got 2 units of Hammers of Gundabad to encircle them. So they are now going to lose. I've got my crossbows up on this slight elevation over here, going after this unit of Belagir halberds he had in reserve. I'm trying to get as many kills as I can from this ridge. before the inevitable happens, and this is where I should have kept my Axemen of Erebor in reserve, because it would have given me another infantry unit to try and ward off the Warlords of Umbar, because they are axe units, so they do have the good versus cavalry trait. Off a charge they'll still be absolutely slaughtered, not to the same extent that other units will be. Dwarves have got higher mass. This unit of halberds is getting destroyed because they were surrounded. This is a very weird infantry blob that he's got going on. It's a shame my crossbows can't reach that far, because the Narduzagar are one of his most deadly units to my infantry. But this southern part of the engagement has gone horrendously for me. I've lost all my goats, I'm going to lose my halberds that I was trying to get over there to support them, and I'm going to lose the lower part of my shield wall. The rest of my shield wall is holding up very well because he didn't have the infantry to engage all of it properly, so the Nardu Tariq are getting absolutely butchered by my Ironfoot warriors. One part of the line is already folded. I'm trying to get the Blacklock engineers to shoot the Warlords of Umbar. Up here his Castamir's Chosen will hold on for a long time, but they will lose. Let's see, can they get a shot off? The Warlords of Umbar a little beat up. They've lost a few men, well, they've lost about 5, so it's not the end of the world for them. Shooting the Blacklock engineers ammunition into the Warlords of Umbar. So they will get a few kills. The Blacklock engineers will not die easily in melee, and there goes the general, killed by the Ironfoot crossbows, I believe. He needs to get his cav out of here. He would have been better served, I think, trying to charge the lower part of the line and finish that up, because charging into the crossbows, you're always going to lose some units. And the Warlords of Umbar at this stage are the thing that he can really leverage against me. I've got no mobility at all, and all of my infantry had to be engaged. I'm bringing over the Ironfoot warriors to try and kill these Castamir's Chosen a little more quickly, because I know that the lower part of the battle is kind of lost. It just depends on how long my troops can hold out for. Got Axemen of Erebor. The Nardu Tariq are still holding on to still holding on to life, so they are going to lose, but they have tied up a large amount of my shield wall for a long time, so they have done their job in a way. Now he's bringing up some more Corsair Blackguards. Their ammunition is going to be lethal. They're pretty good in melee as well, so they're not going to fold easily no matter what I do to them. The crossbows will do a decent amount of damage to them, but at this point it's kind of a lost cause. He's actually firing at my Blacklock engineers. Blacklock engineers, I think, the most elite crossbows in the game. I feel comfortable in saying that. The runic ones are pretty good as well, the Dragon's Wrath crossbows, but I doubt they're as good as the Blacklock, so I need to go into that in a bit more detail. Haven't done the crossbows yet. I'll get to it though. He's charging into the regular crossbows, much better target really because they're softer and they're still doing a ton of damage to the Warlords. The longer they stay here though, the more ammunition they're going to eat. The Hammers of Gundabad doing very well. Interestingly enough though, the Hammers of Gundabad, not a unit with as high a morale as you would expect, so I really need to keep them motivated to stay in the fight. Down here, the lower part of my line is still holding on relatively well, honestly. Most of it is Ironfoot warriors, and there's a few Axemen of Erebor still alive. But now they're being surrounded by Corsair Blackguards, Belagir Halberds, and Abrazanim Narduzagar, and that's going to be really the end. These Castamir's Rangers just completely vanished. There they are again. Damned hidden units. Where are his crossbow Corsairs? I think I actually routed them, didn't I? No, I didn't. They're still over there. Unfortunate. But this lower part of the line, it will hold out for a decent amount of time, but Abrazanim, Belagir Halberds, sending in the Blackguards to that fight was kind of a mistake. They're just going to get themselves killed for no reason. He is trying to work his way up my line, though, to get to the core of my infantry, which is up here. Still quite a lot of Ironfoot warriors, a lot of hammers. But ultimately I'm running out of units. Especially up here, I wasn't really able to kill these warlords, and he's hacking his way through my crossbows, which at this point I need. The early missteps with my cavalry have really cost me dear. And I'm not as far behind as you might expect, mainly because I was able to kill his infantry with a lot of impunity in the middle in some areas, but really I lost far too many units early on. And I'm still trying to recover from that. The Ironfoot warriors, though, are a very standard dwarf unit, and they're still able to hold for a long time. You're likely to see these guys a lot in field battles simply because they're so cost effective. Cool looking unit. It's really a matter of what sort of elite units do you want to bring, and I decided to go, weirdly for the dwarves, with cavalry and range. It is an option, but you need to do a far better job than I did at microing those goats. You've got to remember how slow they are. You've got to just sort of pick your moment to engage and then stick with it. The Castamir's Chosen are still fighting, but they're nearly out for the count. These Warlords of Umbar are still running around trying to kill my crossbows. I think the Blacklock Engineers are out of ammunition, which is why I'm now charging them into melee. They did quite a lot of damage both to the Castamir's Chosen and to the Warlords themselves. I disengaged this unit of hammers to try and finish off these Warlords, because I need to get them off the field now so that I'm not in danger of rear charges. But unfortunately it's just taking too long. The Dwarf army is not mobile, and it's a fact that Umbar here have managed to leverage against me all too easily, really. In the areas where my line was strong and rigid, that was where I did well, but ultimately there were cracks in my defences and he was able to exploit them rather well. Still though, as long as I can keep my crossbows with ammunition alive, I still have a shot at this. I need to really target his Abrazanim Narduzagar. That's the most dangerous unit for me now, because I don't have anything that can match it pound for pound in melee, so I'm going to need to peel them away at range. I've still got a clump of infantry over here that's doing quite well for itself. It's mainly Ironfoot warriors though. Most of the Axemen of Erebor, well, those ones are fighting to the death and broken, so their effectiveness is basically all gone. All of these dwarf units are shaken. There are some that are coming back from routing over here, some halberds and some warriors, which I'm going to try and use to tie up some halberds before they can join the fight. And I have actually managed to... well, no, I haven't. I'm still behind. I was actually ahead before, wasn't I? That's interesting, but ultimately the type of units I have are not right for the situation. My Blacklocks are out of ammunition, so they are now essentially not bad in melee, but, you know, really the effectiveness of them is mostly spent. They will beat the Castamir's Rangers handily in melee. It's all down to whether my crossbows can get a decent number of kills, and whether my hammers can stomach the fight. Really the only thing that can stand up to my hammers and beat them are the Narduzagar. But a lot of my units are now starting to rout, so... Dwarven infantry is stalwart and resolute, but without the general, some of their lower tier units are still vulnerable to this sort of thing. Mass routing. And the momentum is with Umbar. Crossbow Corsairs in the background. There's a small pocket of engagement over here with my Ironfoot halberds, but they too are now routing, so my men are giving up. They've lost the stomach for the fight. These Hammers of Gundabad are still in melee. They'll be a little bit tougher to break, but they still don't have the excellent morale that some of the Umbar units have, like the Narduzagar. They ain't going nowhere. The Nardutarek, they were in melee for a long time without breaking, but now my men are losing the stomach for the fight. I've still got crossbow ammunition though. Not giving up on this quite yet. He's still got some Naru Naaru Royal Guard as well. I've still got like a tiny unit of crossbows over here of 4 men. He's going to get his Royal Guard into melee against my crossbows though, and as soon as he silences those, it's pretty much curtains for me, I fear. I'm behind in terms of the enemies killed, and I don't have the right troops for the job. The Hammers of Gundabad are really the only ones that can stand up to this sort of pressure, and even then, the Abrazanim are too strong. I can only hope that some of my units return from routing at this point, which a unit of Ironfoot Warriors did. Unit of 36, they're coming back to the fight. And I need them, because I need them to save my crossbows. They're in melee against a unit which will absolutely wreck them. But it's not looking good. Belagir halberds are closing the jaws. I've got routing Hammers of Gundabad. The Blacklock Engineers probably won't rout. They are shaken, but there's enough of them here that they'll probably just fight to the death.
Something changes in the course of battle, for defeat seems almost certain.
5 percentage points behind. It's not looking good. This unit of Ironfoot Warriors slowly but surely makes its way into melee, but kind of too late. This crossbow unit is all gone. More Hammers of Gundabad are routing. I think I've only got 1 unit of them still in combat, and it's wavering. It's really no match for the Abrazanim in this sort of context, especially when they've got Belagir halberds backing them up, getting the surround off. Castamir's Rangers, in combination with the Crossbow Corsairs in melee, were able to overwhelm the Blacklock Engineers. There go my Hammers of Gundabad. All of them are routing. It's not looking good. It's not impossible, because I still do have crossbows, but they're still stuck in melee. Well, actually, no, I think they all died. Oh, excuse me, allergies. I still have 4 crossbows. Honestly, this is kind of a lost cause at the minute. I'm just fighting on for the hell of it. Those Ironfoot Warriors have got no chance against Abrazanim. Umbar are strong in melee though. Like, the dwarves are still the best infantry faction, but if you bring your lower tier units and expect them to go toe to toe with Umbar's best, it's not going to work out. This sort of thing can happen. I lost my cav early on and I was made to pay dearly for it. Because now he's got his Abrazanim Narduzagar still running around, still relatively healthy. Still got halberdiers. His ranged units are not really a huge threat in melee, but the numbers that they offer, he's still got a couple of Veligir halberds back there. They survived the crossbow bombardment. Going to charge in the hammers of Gundabad, where they will probably rout pretty damn quickly. All stomach for this battle has been lost. There they go. So it's going to be a victory for Umbar. Look at that. The jaws were tightened.
Our enemies have snatched victory from us like thieves in the night. They will not be so lucky next time.
Well, there we go. My idea for an unorthodox dwarf army didn't really work in this case because I completely misused my cavalry. The ranged portion of my army did their job relatively well though. If we go down here, we have the Blackrock Engineers getting a lot of kills. Ironfoot Crossbows both getting a decent number of kills. This one, 57, that's not great, but they were the unit that took a lot of crossbow fire themselves, so they paid for themselves. The Ironfoot Wargoats, 1 kill. That's dreadful considering they would... I would expect them to do better in melee against the Warlords of Umbar than that, but they were also being hit by jabbies and spears. The Ironfoot Hammer Guard did better, but then again that's because they charged their spear unit in the flank and were also in melee for a little longer. Ultimately, though, the cav didn't pay off for me, and a dwarf army is built on its very elite infantry corps, and I kind of neglected that. The Hammers of Gundabad have received a buff, but I still wouldn't say they're one of the absolute top-tier dwarf units. I should have brought something along the lines of, Mithril Guard or Guards of Khazad-dûm, or even something like Sons of Durin, just to hold down the centre of my army. Really, he was able to nibble away at my line from the southern side, you would say, the bottom of my shield wall upwards. Because at the top of this fight I was doing very well. The Castamir's Chosen were chewed up by my Hammers of Gundabad and my crossbows. The Nadu Tariq were beaten back by a combination of Axemen of Erebor and Ironfoot Warriors, but it wasn't enough. The shield wall was flanked as a result of my cavalry completely failing. And Umbar's infantry is strong enough to go toe-to-toe with the dwarves in this situation. If I had brought a couple of units of elite high-tier infantry as opposed to cavalry, it could have been different, but he had enough units left that it still would have been a close fight with those Narduzagar around. So there we are. I lost this time. Usually when I lose it's a very one-sided affair against me. It's not often that a good game arises from a time when I lose, because usually I either fold completely or narrowly squeak out a victory, which is why I post a lot of my wins. So I'm sure Steele will be happy that I actually posted one of where he won, which, hopefully there'll be a few more battle replays in the days to come. A few more top 10s, a few more quality quantity things, and yeah, we'll take it from there, and I hope you enjoyed this replay.